Well, um, coming on a little bit late, so has to be. We are at 1,360 days, no sign of life, and we are. Let's see if we're live. And of course, it's very busy since we filed an amicus notice, an amicus curiae notice. And so, of course, everything is pretty busy. Okay, it looks like we're on. Let me make sure all the time you can hear me. Yep. Are we on? Yep. Okay, it looks like we're on. Okay. All right, everyone. So I think we're doing well, and I think you can hear me. Um, so, yes, if you don't know what an amicus brief is, it is amicus curiae means a friend of the court. And you don't have to be a lawyer to file one. And I think this is really important for all of us to know. And you would think with all the years that we have to spend in a classroom that we would learn about our rights and about this really early on, that when you have information that is important to a case, especially a major case, um, especially one that affects capital murder cases, um, that you can submit, that you have the right to submit an amicus notice and give the court your information. And this is very important because you can bypass, like the CID or the FBI, right? You can bypass them and you can go directly to the courts and give them your information. And so, of course, this information is not new from us. It has been reported um, in in the news, um, and we gave an exhibit of one of those articles, and that's Reyes Mata. I think he's going to be famous now. He's going to be famous because he's now part of the SB4 case. His work, his amazing open records request that revealed the fraud that Bill Hicks was perpetrating on the courts. So, which, I don't know if it's perjury. I don't know what all the violations are that he has committed just because of this fraud. Because when you commit fraud, then it violates other laws, right? It's, domino effect in the effects. And of course, all of the capital murder cases that he has dealt with, and he should have never been appointed because he had a huge conflict of interest, and the major case there in El Paso was the Walmart mass shooting case of August 3rd, 2019, and yet he was a recess appointment. I think that this was a huge short-sightedness, but he is a fraud. And so he did not recuse himself. He accepted the appointment. He should never have accepted it um, because he had been um, representing Purchase Funeral Homes, who are key witnesses in the Walmart mass shooting, very important witnesses. Not as important as the chief medical examiner, who was in charge of examining all the forensic evidence of the deceased individuals, the victims. No, he's also a fraud, right? He's also a fraud that was perpetuated, in my opinion, by Veronica Escobar, because Veronica Escobar was the judge that approved, look the other way, whatever you want to say, of the appointment in the El Paso County appointments for the chief medical examiner, Mario A. Rascon Ortiz. So that is huge. And so we didn't add that in to this amicus notice because the amicus notice was to notify about Bill Hicks not being a legitimate party to the SB4. So, you can get really emotional in all of this, especially the mom of the missing murdered soldier, right? You can get very emotional and you just want to just lay it in on everybody. But you have to put all those emotions aside and look at the case, look at all this legally. And legally, this is about the SB4 case suing the district attorney of the 34th Judicial Office, and he's illegitimate. So, you got to notify the court, hey, you're trying to go after someone that's not even legitimate. He's not even legitimately the DA, and you're going to run into some trouble with that, right? You're going to run into some trouble. So that's the whole purpose of that. And for us, we have absolutely invested interest in this because, if we don't have a legitimate district attorney that is prosecuting, that legitimately can identify the crimes, document the crimes, and prosecute capital murder crimes, which our son's case absolutely is a capital murder case, binational murder case, then we absolutely have an invested interest. And so we needed to notify, be a friend to the court and notify the court of what's going on. So, and it's a very big case, the SB4. It had a lot of, you have to find all of the lawyers involved, right? And all of the parties involved in this case to notify them. And one of them, of course, is Governor Abbott. And so you need to know who is representing Governor Abbott in this case, also who is representing Bill Hicks in the case, in the SB4 case, and all the, so you have the plaintiffs and the defendants and everything. You have to get all that together. And so that's why, behind the scenes, we are working really, really hard. We don't want to let anyone down because we know now, think about all the victims and the families that have been negatively affected and all the crime that has been allowed to go on because of this fraud against the courts, because of Bill Hicks's fraud with Bob Moore's fraud, right? Bob Moore's fraud, absolutely, which anytime you say Bob Moore and his group, then you're talking about El Paso Community Foundation, which was being investigated and needs to be investigated more because they are part of the fraud. And of course, Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia's attorney, which is also Thomas Hoffman's attorney, Justin Underwood, who targeted our son's case. Okay. Rosa Maria absolutely and Thomas Hoffman absolutely targeted our son's case. And so this is really important when Bill Hicks, who is perpetrating a fraud on the court, a fraud on the community of El Paso, is colluding with the attorney, Justin Underwood, of Rosa Maria, those that are targeting our son's case and are sharing a residence with others, Danae Katzen, who's targeting our son's case. And then you have the media targeting our son's case in, and what I mean by that is Bob Moore, El Paso Community Foundation, right? Because they own El Paso Matters. So this is, and then you have Dreams Cabaret convicted criminal, Leilani Hart, with the CID involved in this, with the CID Tavita Nusa, and of course, dirty agent Marlon Soto, with the dirty agent or supervisory agent of the FBI, Jesus Eddie Nieto Jr., who's married to intelligence there on Fort Bliss, who has conflicts of interest with the Bugado family. And you have the father-in-law of the Lieutenant Colonel Bradford Bugado in the G3 of the 32nd ADCOM, who also has conflicts of interest, um, uh, including but not limited to his father-in-law, Nadal Baim, who walks into the Dollar General and looks at the flyers on the door of Dollar General and says, you can take those flyers of the missing soldier Richard Halliday down because I'm FBI and the FBI has found him in Juarez, Mexico. Shh. And it's not good news. He's dead. They found his remains in Juarez, Mexico. And then, we get within an hour of him doing that, we are there and get the CCTV footage of that. We get a video of the cashier that was speaking with him, her testimony, her witness testimony on video. We hand that all in, and what's going on? A cover-up of this huge degree, this just a huge cover-up, because cartel are involved in this, and the fraud of the fraud is just so, the tampering, the fraud, the giving unauthorized access to files. And when I say unauthorized access to files in the CID of Richard, that includes his whistleblowing files, not just his search and investigation files. That tampering was in his whistleblowing files because we were told by Marlon Soto that it wasn't just Richard's file, it was many files. And when he was saying Richard, meaning the search and investigation. And so we know that there were files of his whistleblowing and probably others that were being tampered with. And we know that before the Walmart mass shooting came Richard's whistleblowing complaints, and that there were audits on the weapons audits. We know that from the generals. We know that from dirty agent Marlon Soto. In these conversations, you have to glean information that comes out from it. And then, of course, we know from the interviews of Belen Rocha, her video interviews, her text messages, the complaints that Richard made to CID, the many complaints that he made to CPS, and also turning in sex videos that include her in it, and we have heard from witnesses that these sex cult videos were being airdropped Okay, they were being airdropped, whether you wanted them or not. And there was even we were like, is that even possible that what we're being told is true? And there was a case in Jacksonville, Florida, where sex videos were being just airdropped to um, to phones, just to phones. Uh, so yes, this is absolutely technically possible that this absolutely is happening, whether you want them or not. And so then it's your duty then to turn them in, right? To turn them in. So, um, and we know that Richard was then subsequently framed, but they did a bad job with the framing. Just like, let's go back to Bill Hicks, because he did a really bad job trying to cover for his fraudulent activities. And what do I mean by this? Because he was representing Purchase funeral homes up until he was um, right before he was sworn in. And he was supposed to sign the anti-bribery statement before he was sworn in, and he failed to do that. That is called the Statement of Officer. That is required by the Texas Constitution, which is a safety net of our rights and against the government. The Constitution puts restraints on our government officials and their actions against us to protect us against those officials, right? Otherwise, we just have total tyranny all the time. And he failed to obey the Texas Constitution. Now, you could say, okay, well, give him a few days or whatever. Yeah, okay, whatever. Maybe it was an oversight, whatever. I don't think so, because what happened is there was open records request for those documents. And on I believe it was the 25th of January of 2023, the Secretary of State says, I don't have your documents. You never signed a statement of officer. Okay. And so he did so and tampered with the timestamps, which is such a crime, y'all. That's tampering with evidence. And he's a DA. He's a DA. And he's tampering with timestamps, the very foundation of the Department of Justice itself is timestamps. And, because if you don't have timestamps, there's no justice. And he's tampering with them. But he just, when he tampered with the timestamps, he tampered to backdate it seemingly to the 11th of January. Well, the legislature of Texas was in session on the 11th. And so he messed up. He did a bad job trying to cover for his fraud. And now so not only did he not sign the statement of officer before he was sworn in, which, okay, maybe you could forgive him for that and, okay, give him a little cushion. But no, he tampered with evidence and backdated it. And when he backdated it, it made it an active, in session legislature appointment. Well, that messes everything up because he needed to resubmit then all of his documents for the scrutiny of the legislature to look through to see, hey, he didn't pay his taxes for 2 years in a row. He has major complaints against him. He has a lot of dirty laundry, and he has a conflict of interest in El Paso, the district attorney's office that is supposed to be prosecuting the Walmart mass shooting case. Yet he has a major conflict of interest with Purchase Funeral Homes. No, thank you. No, thank you. I think there's other lawyers out there that we can appoint for this position until we have a duly elected one again, right? Um, so that is, uh, he messed up. So, because he never did submit that, he never went through that scrutiny. It was never resubmitted. So, if I was the Congress there, if I was the legislature, the Senate there, the legislature in Texas, I would be pretty upset because now my duty was just violated. My whole reason why I'm elected for this oversight has now been violated, and they just kind of walked over, they just poo-pooed my very existence. Why do we even need a legislature if they can just bypass it? So the crimes just compiled on top of each other with the fraud. And that's what I mean. The fraud just gets worse and worse. It's not just one little simple, oh, I didn't sign the anti-bribery statement that I should have. No, it got worse and worse. And thanks to Reyes Mata, he pointed that out. So this is so if he is a fraud with this, what else is he a fraud with? You see, he's a fraud with Mario Raskin Ortiz, his prime witness in every capital murder case that he does, because the chief medical examiner absolutely is a prime witness on the cause of death. So that is really important when it comes to um, our autopsies and not getting answers for our autopsies, and not just our case, but then all the capital murder cases, including all those in the Walmart mass shooting. So since 2014. So this is definitely a fraud on the court and a fraud against the community of El Paso. So, yeah, it's so that has been really the major topic for the last few days, getting all of this together behind the scenes and getting that submitted to the right, emails and offices and all of that, and then getting that out to the media. And so we've been swamped. We've been swamped, and that's why we're burning the midnight oil. But very, very important information. And now, our responses have to be very careful, because we want to, our primary aim is to get Richard. We want the remains of our son. And so everything has to be well thought out, because we're dealing with a very corrupt institutions and agencies and that. But the law itself, the Constitution itself, that's why they hate the Constitution, and that's why they want us to think of it badly. And that's why they violate it all the time. And they're the criminals. I hope everyone understands that the officers, the representatives that violate, including district attorneys, that violate our constitutions, they are the criminals. So Bob Moore and Bill Hicks and Justin Underwood and many, Marlon Soto and Tavita Nusa and Jesus Nieto, Eddie Nieto, and on and on. They are the criminals. Sean Bernabe and Clem Coward and Michael Garrett, these generals, they are the criminals. And it's not the uniform that they wear. It's not the office that they hold that is criminal. It is the these individuals. And I think that is very, very important to understand. And it's the law itself and these offices that are moving. It's the law that allows us to put in this amicus notice, right? It is the law that allows us to make these live streams every day. It is the law that allows us to demand accountability, right? And get the open records and gather all the evidence. This is why the law is on our side. The stars in their course are on our side. And these criminals really, all they have is their criminal counterparts or inside there that they have inserted. And we need to identify the criminals that are wearing our uniforms, that are holding our offices, that are in positions in these agencies that are criminals. We need to identify them and we need to hold them accountable. So that's really my message. And also, we know that because we have the hard evidence that audio tape was tampered with, that files were tampered with, that witnesses were tampered with, that, just on and on. There was a lot of manipulation, a lot of tampering in our son's case. And as we move forward towards the truth, towards justice, towards accountability, I think I need to make a statement every time to say, look, it's not too late until it's too late to come forward and to admit that you were pressured into committing these crimes, making these, maybe you were paid, part of this criminality because, I know with Jake Jakovitz, they're following orders just like Brigadier General David Stewart. You get this feeling, and I have a feeling, it's just my gut feeling from being face to face with them, seeing Jake Jakovitz, I call him Shaky Jake, and no matter what kind of medical problem he might have, when we started getting in the weeds about this case, discussing this case, and when we went out to eat about this case, his shaking was intense. Okay? He was Shaky Jake. And so I think he has a conscience because seeing the eyes of David Stewart, I think he has a conscience. And I think his heels got put together. I think he was threatened. His family probably was even threatened. I absolutely believe that that is a huge possibility because we have been threatened, we have been bullied, we have been retaliated against. So I can't even imagine because they have more leverage with these NCOs and these generals. And I even think it within the cartel chain of command. If you're in the cartel chain of command, and I can't even imagine the bullying that you go through, the absolute hell that you go through, the pressure that you go through to continue these kinds of deadly crimes, these kinds of crimes against humanity. because they're crimes against humanity. And, so I just urge those to come forward, to leave that behind, and I know it's a risk. Everything in life is a risk. If, everything in life is a risk. So, and the hypnosis is to always put us in fear, always consider, ourselves first, right? Oh, you have to love yourself. Oh, you have to love yourself. Oh, you have to love yourself. No, no, I don't buy that. I don't buy that one bit. Um, uh, it's all about being the Good Samaritan. It's all about being the Good Samaritan and going out of your way, coming out of yourself, being selfless. Being a parent is being selfless. Fighting for justice is being selfless, right? Um, so, and I think that having integrity and honor and duty is selfless service, right? It's not selfish service, it's selfless. And the personal courage is selfless. Okay. Um, Absolutely. And I just had a wonderful family. Had a wonderful Omi, my grandmother, that absolutely made that very, very clear in this world, that wanted to teach us to be selfish, to you know, to put ourselves in front of our children, in front of our spouses, in front of God, you know. And she was like, no, no, nope, that's not the way to live. Um, you have to live in a selfless service. And so I'm very glad for that lesson because, believe it or not, uh, we're blessed when we're selfless. We're blessed way more than when we're selfish. It's an odd thing. You think, oh, um, taking care of our elderly, of our children, or whatever, that's such hard work, and it's drudgery or something like this. And no, when you learn how to whistle while you're being selfless, um, and you do it because it needs to be done, and you do it with joy because it needs to be done with joy, um, there is incredible blessings. And I know that at the end of the day, at the end of this, when we get Richard's remains, whatever happens, whatever happens, it's going to be so incredible. It's already been incredible. And so I urge those who have tampered, who have um, interfered in the interference in the investigation, those that have interfered in the investigation of our son, of the Walmart case, of Glennon Oakley Jr.'s case, of Asia Graham's case, etc., to come forward. To come forward, to switch sides. That's what I really urge. Because this side is really good. It's really good. The emotions, it's good emotions. It might be hard work, but it's good emotions, and it's a privilege. And so I just want to make sure that people know that. The other thing that I did want to address that I think is really important, because I think they're using it, when I mean they, I'm talking about this whole election cycle and the politics right now or whatever. Um, I believe, and I don't know if it's finalized, but there seems to be some kind of forgiveness of student loan debt that's on the table. And I see this as definitely part of Richard's case. And it's kind of personal, but I absolutely see this as part of Richard's case. And I wanted to address it because it is such a divisive subject, but I don't think it is. Um, the student loan monies, okay, are huge. The last time I looked, they were the number one resource for our government. That way more than federal income tax. Okay? They were the number one asset, I should say, the number one asset for the federal government, way more than federal income tax. And now, it is kind of weird that we even talk about it because they just digitize money. So why do we even pay federal income tax? Because they just digitize trillions of dollars, I mean, let's just, they're the biggest counterfeiters ever. They have nothing to back up the digitizing of currency that they do. I mean, it's very clear. And so, and they want to get the power to do that. That's like, if you look at the first thing they do after they conquer Lebanon, the first thing they do after they conquer Iraq, the first thing they do after they conquer any country is to create a Federal Reserve Bank so that they could digitize currency, right? So they could digitize trillions. I don't know, but the income, the asset for student loans, way surpasses federal income tax. And so to forgive debt on that means that they're cutting that asset. Okay? They're cutting that asset. And that asset, to me, what does it mean? It means control over those people. Because when you're in debt, you are controlled. You are in control because you have to do that job that you went to school for, right? In order to make those payments. And I think a lot of people, especially with the COVID, lost their jobs or whatever, and they were just defaulting on it. I don't know. It just seems that the numbers show that there was a lot of default on student loans anyway. And so they're cutting their asset, which to me, it's not the money because they can digitize the money, right? But maybe it's their pocket money. I don't know. But what they're doing is they are cutting the chains off of these young people that are paying this debt. And you can go, oh, but because I had student loan debt, I had to pay it years ago, right? And it was Mary Hardin Baylor. Mary Hardin Baylor wasn't cheap. So I absolutely understand. And you can say, oh, it's unfair or whatever, but no, this has to start somewhere. The cutting of chains off of these young people has to start somewhere, in my opinion, right? And because I know that debt makes people mean. Um, it brings the worst out in people when you're in debt. And the criminals, I can tell you this right now, the criminals, they get all kinds of favors. They, steal identities, run up the bills, declare bankruptcy, steal identities, run up the bills, declare bankruptcy, and they're using different names and identities. So, it's just this business plan, I guess, that they have. But it's just, so but you have these honest young people that have been led to these universities that, to me, have betrayed education itself in so many respects. And we saw that during COVID, even in the medical field and stuff, in my opinion, right? So they betray the education, and then they're stuck in these jobs because they have these big bills they have to pay. So these honest people now might get some relief. I hope they get some relief. I hope we have debt forgiveness. That's what I'm saying, and I hope, because I think that it's going to come back. Sometimes they do things for evil. Let me try to buy votes or whatever, um, try to get my numbers up or whatever. Um, but I think it's not going to produce what they want, because being relieved of debt makes you think straighter and makes you free to do jobs that you might enjoy, change, reassess your life. And I'm not saying everyone's going to make good decisions, but it at least gives that opportunity. And I think that's a really good thing. And with those good emotions that come from debt relief, um, especially in the El Paso area, you know, in the government system, in the legal system, in the law enforcement system, that might really help justice, and it might help, I believe, our son's case. And it might get people to stand up against being entrapped in debt, and you only need like 10%, 20% of those to wake up and to take a, a, a stance. And so I am definitely, it's kind of like that prodigy, the prodigal son, where, he gets his wealth and he goes off and he blows it all and he comes back to his dad because he's like, even the servants get better than what these pigs are, I'm feeding these pigs because I'm broke now, and I'm looking at this food and I'm hungry, and I'm thinking, why am I doing this? I need to go back and be a servant to my dad, because at least he'll give me decent food and shelter, right? Because even the servants of my dad got treated better. Um, and so he goes back to be a servant to his father, and his father welcomes him back as his son. And the other son is kind of a little annoyed, maybe a little annoyed, or maybe doesn't understand what's going on. And he goes, "You don't understand. They were dead and now they're alive, right? My son was dead and now he's alive." Um, and, so let's break out and have a really good barbecue now, right? Let's go get the fattened lamb or the fattened calf, and let's have a feast and celebrate. And I think that it has to start somewhere, and we need to be very happy when there's debt relief, because it makes people that are honest, the criminals, they get it anyway. They get their houses bought at they figure out how to manipulate all the different system and the money. I'm telling you, they're all playing the system in this, um because they're all making money off of trafficking, all kinds of stuff, from humans to children to porn to child pornography to drugs and all of this. And then they funnel the money through Dreams Cabaret. Maybe it's Dreams Cabaret. But they look at, or through maybe the El Paso Community Foundation, right? And they find all their way to money launder and all that stuff, and and they're laughing all the way to the bank. They think, and then these honest people um, are shackled to these student loans that they were told over and over again, if you're going to make it in life, you got to go to college, right? Um, so the fraud that has been perpetrated on us. So I'm really curious, and I'm very happy if there's debt forgiveness when it comes to these student loans. And I'm hoping that there will be more debt forgiveness, right, for honest, hardworking people. Absolutely. So that's my thought on that, and I needed to mention that because the the mo the increase of good emotions is going to make people courageous. That's when they're going to get there. To me, they'll have something to fight for, and they'll have integrity and honor, and and it just needs to be a minority of those people to make a real difference in our country. So, we need all of them that we can get. So thank you so much for coming on tonight. The little speck that I video, this is another thing that I wanted to mention. The little video that has been kind of going viral on alternative media of, this splash, this explosion up in the sky. I have my own thoughts on this attack on Israel and these wars and all of that. And I'm always thinking I'm not at liberty to say because it's just my thoughts. But I'm not afraid because I think the whole thing, it's kind of like, an illusion. And it could be an illusion with reality, where they manipulate reality. But I think the narrative is not truthful. That's for sure. It's kind of like the Chinese are building a missile base on the dark side of the moon and they're going to point missiles down at us. It's like, really? Really? Have you looked at the moon? Come on. Have you looked at the moon? It's impossible. Absolutely impossible. And so I think that narrative is meant to scare us. And, the whole COVID mandate thing is just meant to scare us, to manipulate us, just like the student debt, just to manipulate us and control us. And, you know, uh, 9/11 to manipulate us and to control us and on and on. And the Walmart case is just, that is such a fake narrative. Rosa Maria Valdez Garcia, who targeted our son's case and more, is, I think, fraudulent. And it's not my thinking, because the DA's office there in El Paso was investigating because of her fraud allegations, the allegations of fraud against her and El Paso Community Foundation for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And, she claiming victimhood because the father of her children was found with, a shot to the head. And, I just don't buy that whole narrative that she gives. And we know that the narrative around Walmart is not truthful. And the forensics is botched because it's Mario Rescan Ortiz. So, I think it was, it's just so many lies are perpetrated through these false narratives of manipulation, and they've made a science out of it. And so, even this thing up in the sky that they show that they want us to be afraid of, um, and even remember all the rhetoric and the narrative around this eclipse, they just try to keep us in fear. And, we just have to fear God alone, and that's it. And that's it. And move forward. And we have to remind ourselves every day, not to be afraid. You know, and isn't that the message? Fear not, for I'm with you always until the end of the age. Fear not. You're not alone. I'm with you until the end of the age. Um, so I think that's how I'll end tonight. Thank you so much. God bless you. And I will be back tomorrow, God willing. Bye bye. Thank you, Anicia, for coming on. Thank you for your love and your prayers.